In the spirit of reconciliation, the Theatre Thoughts podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all traditional custodians of the land on which our episodes are recorded.
So yeah, we go through a lot of different styles and different genres, of course borrowing from as well, or being inspired from a lot of First Nations artists as well with some of the songs, which I don't want to talk too much about because that to me is the diamond of our show.
Okay.
Which you have to come and check it out.
Welcome back to a new episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast, hosted by myself, Justin Clarke, and featuring an array of Australia's best and brightest in the theatre industry and beyond. You can get full access to the podcast by signing up to our monthly email and joining the Theatre Thoughts Patreon community for as little as $3 a month. All the details can be found by heading over to our Instagram account at TheatreThoughtsAUS or our official podcast Instagram at TTPod_official. Let us know what you think of this episode by giving us a rating wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome everyone to a new episode of Theatre Thoughts podcast. We have a returning guest today, which I'm super stoked to actually meet them in person. We have a composer, lyricist, actor and singer, currently obsessed with Hades on Nintendo Switch, so I found out. Most recently toured as Catherine Parr in Six the Musical, a role which she originated in Australia in 2019. She also starred in Merrily We Roll Along with the Haze and Papa G in the Australian premiere of Once on This Island. She's currently living and working on Gadigal country to produce new Australian work, and she's here to talk about the new show, The Lucky Country. It's Vidya Makan!
Hi! Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to actually meet you in person.
Thanks. I'm so stoked to be here.
I'm very excited about this show because I've saw recently your reel you're doing online down in Launceston, just going and asking people like, what do you think Australia is? Like, what does it mean to you? And I thought, that's great. That's great marketing.
It was really interesting, like, hearing people's different opinions and also the types of people who would want to even engage and talk with you.
Yeah.
I was definitely surprised by a lot of answers, but, I mean, that's the point of this show. It's about sharing the very, very many voices that we have in this country, in this place that we call Australia.
So I guess the first question to ask is, where did it come from?
That's a big question.
Yeah, it's a bit of a big one.
I think there's a lot of elements that sparked the seed of the show. Part of it was from a place of frustration of, going to the theatre and seeing shows and loving shows, but every time I'd see a person of colour who was Australian on stage, there would very often be a two-dimensional character. Often there was quite racist humour, which was, brought down to, that's Aussie humour, which I just think we can do better than that. And we're also, we are funny. We can be so much funnier than that.
Yeah.
And also for a love of this place and an exploration of who we are. I really wanted to try and put that down into a show. So I decided to just do that and tackle a very, very small concept, which is national identity.
So easy to do.
Yeah, exactly. Really easy. So that was like where the seed for the show came from.
Yeah.
But what's been really interesting is researching very, very different viewpoints about what people say about being Australian and just different elements of Australian culture has really broadened my mind. And I think we'll talk a little bit later about like how the show has been developed. Yeah. And that's kind of been a really cool look into us as a nation in like a meta way as well.
Yeah, so, definitely. And I think there's a lot of discussion around that same question, especially in the past recent years. I think mostly around the concept of, the 26th, like what does that mean for us as a country and where does our identity go for in terms of that?
Yeah, I kept asking myself, like, how do we be a nation who doesn't dismiss the last 280 years but gains 60,000 years of our identity?
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
And also as a settler perspective, as I'm the child of immigrants from South Africa and originally India, I've also got a settler narrative, but I'm also a person of colour. And then there's this white Australian cultural identity that we have, even though we don't have.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have what to me is the most important through line through the narrative of Australian identity, which is our First Nations people and their voice. And what's been cool about the Lucky Country is we've been led by a lot of First Nations artists
so cool.
in that way. So
Yeah.
it's a funny piece in that it's a settler piece. It's written by people who aren't First Nations or of this place, but that, you know, we've worked really hard to work with incredible First Nations artists so that we pay a lot of respect and we honour that gorgeous tradition of song and storytelling and dance that has been here for so many years.
You say it so like poignantly and so well put. So I can tell you've thought about this like a lot.
Yeah, for the last 5 years. Yeah.
So I'll just quickly read out like the description of the show. So it's a new Aussie musical for all Aussies. Digging deep into the themes of identity and belonging, The Lucky Country is a heartfelt, widely entertaining and joyful celebration of who we can be as Australians. You've summed it up perfectly already. So we meet hilarious all-Aussie characters, grey nomads who find love on a Kentucky tour, World War II veteran, a young refugee, even a Chinese-Australian restaurateur who dreams of life as a Byron Bay nudist. Perfect.
Yeah. Why not?
The Kentucky one's so like poignant to me because I used to tour for Top Deck over in Europe. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And so whenever I say like Kentucky tour, I just automatically know the person.
So that song was kind of written about this couple who I went on a Kentucky tour to Morocco, and this song is set in Morocco with my mate from school. Was like, you know, we're in our 20s. It wasn't a Kentucky tour. It was an Intrepid, but same diff.
Same
you know,
thing.
We're traveling.
Yeah.
And there was this couple who had just met on Tinder, and they were like in their 60s.
Yeah.
And they were on this tour, and it was really funny because there was one time where I was knocking on their door because we were really close with them.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, do you want to come and, you know, see the marketplace with us? And you heard this like running behind the doors, and then the door opened and she's in a towel and he's like in the bathroom, and I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Bye. It was so beautiful. Like,
that's so good.
This teenage kind of romance and passion and love, and so it's partly based on them, but also partly based on imagination.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that. That's so like the life experiences that you put into a piece of work.
Totally.
I think is insane. So I guess we talked about really briefly about where it came from, but in terms of your writing style, from what I've gathered so far, you have a lot of Australian inspirations that you've used, specifically in terms of the formatting of the songs. So do you want to talk about like what can we kind of expect, or what was your inspiration for that?
So the first draft that I did of the show was back with Front and Centre, an incredible Melbourne company. Like, thank you so much for supporting our amazing new work. And that was a very, very different show. It was kind of my take on Australian identity. And a lot of those songs were like, I was doing a lot of Sondheim at the time, a lot of piano music. It was beautiful, but I showed it to Sonya, and, you know, a lot of people will say to you, yeah, it's great, but not often will you get people really critiquing your work.
Yeah.
And the ones that do, I think that's such a gift for a new writer. And I took it to Sonya, who was a mentor for me. She's a colleague, a friend. And I was like, what do you think of this? And she just laid it down really honestly. And she was like, look, you're dealing with a massive, massive subject here. Like I said, a national identity, that's huge.
Yeah.
We need to expand this out if you really want to do it properly. And I went, you are so right. So we went back and we rewrote pretty much most of the songs. There are 2 songs that have pretty much stayed the same.
Okay.
But in order to do that, I wanted to try and encapsulate this idea of nationhood. We talk about how we're like this multicultural nation. That's a big thing that's often said.
Seems like a repetitive like rhetoric, I guess.
For sure.
Around it.
But a part of that is that we have so many different voices and types of people that go beyond even just race.
Yeah.
So I wanted to encapsulate that idea with the genres of the songs that we have in the show. So what has been a nightmare for our orchestrator, Heidi Maguire, is that every single song sounds like it's from a completely different musical.
Right.
We have a song about Baker Boy, which sounds like a Baker Boy song.
Yeah.
We have a song about 2 Aussie blokes who were at the footy. There's a little bit of a twist there, which you'll have to come and see the show to find out. But, you know, I listened to a lot of Jimmy Barnes, Farnsey, Cold Chisel, to like for references of that songs. We have references to the Seekers. I actually just did a little playlist of a lot of the songs that we reference. Like I listened to the Play School theme for one of the songs.
My God. Yeah.
There's this Russian choir who are from Mullumbimby called Dostoevsky.
Okay.
Who are fascinating. We have like a 7-minute song about them,
Amazing.
which is this fun Russian-Australian love fest.
Yeah.
We have a fever dream about all the things in Australia that could kill you that's done in the style of a Kylie Minogue, like fever dream. So yeah, we go through a lot of different styles and different genres. Of course, borrowing from as well, or being inspired from a lot of First Nations artists as well with some of the songs, which I don't want to talk too much about because that to me is the diamond of our show.
Okay.
You have to come and check it out.
It's great.
Yeah.
I wasn't I'm a big like musical theatre person.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a massive sort of cultural like music head. But only the last couple of years I've been really switching into Triple J. And I feel like I've just developed a great deal of like, I now know them. I know Budgerah. He's awesome, you know?
Right.
And just all these things that like you seep in.
So much in this country that, you know, is just so much talent. We have so much talent in this country. I think especially in the music scene. It's one of our most incredible industries, I think.
Yeah, and I think the creation of the artist who is a singer and instrument player as well. There's a term, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll probably cut that.
I should know it because I'm one of them.
Yeah, you're one of them. But like using that in musicals has just changed what a musical can be.
For sure.
And I think it makes some of the best work as well.
Yeah. Part of our show, which I'm really excited about as well, is we have a yiraki, which is a word for didgeridoo.
Okay.
Being played live as well by Billy
wow.
Mack, who's awesome.
Yeah.
And like, having that live and watching artists connect to that. We had a cultural consultation workshop last year, a cultural collaboration workshop to expand and grow the show through our First Nations through line. And we worked with a whole range of incredible First Nations artists. And one of the highlights for me was we were working with a few dancers to find a movement language for one of the songs in the show. And having Billy playing the didge and watching these dancers feel the vibrations through the floor, being set on country, and watching their imaginations work and watching their bodies move, it's like sacred. It's like I felt so blessed in that moment that I got to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And they'll get to be a part of that in our show. So I'm really looking forward to audiences enjoying that.
Sounds so exciting. Stuff like that I feel is so unique that you don't often see. And it makes it like fresh and opens up like a whole different perspective as well.
I hope so. That's what my goal is with this show, is to be seen as not just some small indie show, like to be seen as part of the Australian canon. And this is what we can be alongside the great works which do exist in the musical theatre canon here in Australia. But that these kind of shows and these kind of voices and these kind of ways of telling stories as who we are can also be part of that conversation.
Well, I think I was going to come back to what you were saying just then about like the cultural aspects and being a part of it. Because I know, like, I recently went to New Zealand, Aotearoa, and we took part in one of the tribal ceremonies in Rotorua, and I had to like lead the group I was with as like their chief, and we had to like I did like greet the leader and say like thank you for having us, and then we took part in the whole welcoming ceremony. We did the hongi, and all those things was just so moving to me. And I was like sitting there the entire time just going, why don't we do this back home? And I was like, why can't I want to do this, but with like the First Nations artists back home? Because it was just like an opening to me that I'd never actually taken part of in someone's, even not my own countries, but, you know, the next, close country to it.
I think there's so much opportunity here that a lot of white Australia misses out on, unfortunately. When you make the contact with those artists and you find those connections, the way that like they've invited us in has been like, I almost want to cry thinking about it because it's been so incredible, you know? I feel so blessed. I feel like my identity is almost like expanded through getting to be a part of a narrative. And I think if you allow, and you meaning like our culture, if we allow to have those pathways opened and allow to lean into the tricky conversations, because the idea of nationhood, it's not a simple one. It's a very, very complex one.
Yeah.
But I think often we run away from the conversation, when we try to just, lace over it with something that's
I think from like my experience, I'm definitely guilty of that because
so am I.
It's because I don't want to offend, and so I choose to distract from the conversation or don't take part in it because I don't want to like put my foot in the wrong place.
For sure.
And I think that's a difficult thing.
I feel like reaching out and talking, I've come on a huge journey in just the writing of this show and getting to meet different artists and getting to learn so much. Now I feel like comfortable talking about a lot of these things, and you're never going to be right. Like you're never going to, everyone's got an opinion, and especially when it comes to the First Nations voices, when it comes to Australian identity, those are really important, and those conflicting ones are really important too. But back to what you were saying, I think it's cool that we lean into, and it's important that we go out and find avenues of ways to engage, because the thing I've realized is that they're there.
Yeah.
We just need to find them, and that they will happily invite you with open arms as long as they are feeling held and that they can trust you, which is something I think we need to work towards.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I keep listening to you. I'm like, that's a clip. That I'm gonna clip that because that's just like so good. I just want to do the snaps. It's so good. After our first successful Q&A with Purple Tape Productions for Expiration Date, the Theatre Thoughts podcast is proud to be hosting Slanted Theatre's Q&A on Tuesday, the 30th of May at Meraki Arts Bar. Come and ask the cast and crew questions about the production and feature on the podcast. For full tickets and information, head to meraki.sydney now or follow us on our Instagram at ttpod_official. Well, I want to talk about you. I know last time you were on, which was amazing talking to. You're in that little production, a little indie production. Six musical.
Tiny.
Never heard of it. And you finished that. Were you working on this show during Six?
Yeah. Working on this and another show.
Were you?
Yeah. So like writing 2 musicals.
Oh my God.
And touring has been pretty full on.
Yeah.
But also, it's part of who I am. And I think like for Six, I got to play Catherine Parr. She herself is a writer who changed the game. The queens would often say, like, who's the most like their role? Vidya is her role. So yeah, I think there's, in some ways, as long as you can balance your time and sleep and hydrate, it actually kind of helped, I think, inform what I was able to bring to the stage in Six.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the next thing I want to ask about your career and your place in the theatre industry is, how do you think your place in the career has changed over the couple of years? And I have a follow-up question, but I want to ask that one first. It feels very Sandra Sully, sorry.
Yeah.
I was like,
No,
what's
that's
your
right.
career?
That's right, Sandra. Yeah, as in like how the industry has changed.
Yeah,
and my place in the
and
industry.
your place in it, yeah.
Yeah, it's changed immensely. When I wanted to go into the musical theatre industry as a kid, I have a theatre loving family, but I never did it as a kid.
Okay.
And yeah, we just love musical theatre. And so when I showed interest in it and I showed some sort of talent in it, and I said to Mum and Dad, I think I want to do this with my life, it was really scary for them because they knew the industry and they knew that they'd never seen anyone who looked like me in it.
Right.
So they were, worried parents going, we came to this country to afford a better life for our kids. Is she going to have a career?
Yeah.
So they actually talked to my singing teacher, and my singing teacher was like, well, she's got the talent. Let's see if she can find the place. And so that was how I kind of started. And then when I graduated from uni, what I would find was I'd often audition for commercial gigs and I'd kind of get there, but never quite, because I didn't quite fit a lot of the molds that they were looking for, where I was not black enough or not Latinx enough, or too Indian or too this or too that. I felt that I never got to be really seen for me, and sometimes you don't realize what you're missing until you find it. And that I will often talk about in Six when I went into the audition room for them. I realized, oh my God, this is the first time I'm actually just being seen as a woman.
Yeah.
And getting to audition just as me. I'm not trying to fill some sort of racial stereotype.
Yeah.
So that was really eye-opening for me. And things I think have really changed, where you look globally at the kind of shows that are being produced. I think with the success of, In the Heights, however many years ago, followed by Hamilton, and then you have things like Six, where it was written by 2 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
It was never meant to be the cult following, have the cult following that it has now. It was just meant to be a student production that Toby and Lucy wrote for their friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is at the essence of it. So I think that gaining popularity has also then given scope and given pathways for even here in Australia. I look at the new work that's being produced. Fangirls and like The Lovers both have incredibly successful seasons with young people of color wanting to go and watch these shows.
Yeah.
So it's definitely changed a lot in the last couple of years. I wrote a song a few years back called I Need You to See Me, which was about visibility in the entertainment industry, and we had like 101 BIPOC and CALD artists.
Awesome.
Yeah, from aged 18 to 25. And when that got released, it was kind of in 2020 where everyone was locked down. Everyone was talking about Black Lives Matter and how that applies to our industry. And the thing is, these voices have been here forever. And there have been people like my colleague Sonya Suares she's 15 years older than me, and she's been having the same conversations, saying the same things for so many years. Finally, it seems people are starting to listen.
Yeah.
And what they're finding, I think, is gold.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the following of those shows, Six, and The
Totally.
Lovers got a following for like the short run it had. Fangirls, I mean, can't even get me started on that one.
Yeah.
So I think it shows that, you know, there's not just the repeat musicals that you can just dig up and go, oh, we'll need a bit of money.
I think we need to give Aussie audiences more credit than I think we have done previously.
Yeah.
I think we often think that Aussie audiences, they want this particular thing. But actually, I think we're a pretty sophisticated nation in a way. And I say sophisticated in the lens of thirsty. You know, we're thirsty for...
That's exactly what Mel and Sam said last night. They were thirsty.
Yeah.
You know, so it's definitely like a reoccurring thing that I'm hearing is that we just want like that opportunity.
Even just like hearing an Australian voice on stage, that can be such a confronting thing because we never get that.
Yeah.
But then when you lean into it, it's like, oh my God, I can just kind of see myself up there.
Yeah.
That was a cool thing about Six as well.
Yeah, definitely. It was one thing before I saw it, I questioned. I went, well, are they going to do British accents or are they going to do Australian? And when I saw it, it was jarring. It was us going, whoa, hang on a sec.
Whoa.
But then once you settle in, you go, nah, go for it. You just be yourself. It was great. Well, working with Sonya then, where did you cross paths? And what's it been like working with her?
I met Sonya kind of early on in my career. Like I said, I was auditioning and just finding that I wasn't getting work. Sonya created this incredible Sondheim theatre company in Melbourne called Watch This.
Okay.
And I auditioned for one of their shows and got cast, and we kind of started to like bond and to click, and I looked up to her a lot as kind of a mentor. And then, we just continued to talk, and then through... I can't remember what year it was now, but I got the lead in their show Sunday in the Park with George, where I got to play Dot and Marie, which was like one of like, oh my God, like a life dream come true. And I worked really well with Sonya and also Dean Drieberg, who's resident director now of Hamilton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we just got on really well. And Sonya was really interested in my writing. Watch This actually hosted a reading of one of my earlier works called Woman.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, kind of how we got to cross paths. And then eventually when I told her about what is now The Lucky Country, she loved it because it was like right down her alley. Sonya is a genius. Like I feel like in a lot of this process, I'm the craftsman where like I know how to write a song and I know how to write lyric. But the way that we'd work on it was in lockdown. So I'd go to a house and we'd sit on the little patch of grass outside of her house.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And we'd sit there and her kids would kind of come and bring us cookies and tea. And she'd just be like, so in this year, blah, 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 and the White Australia policy, blah, 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 blah. And she has all of this incredible information in her brain. And I'd be like, and I'd come up with like notes. And, you know, I'd like pages and pages of notes, and I'd go home and basically from what she said, I'd write the songs.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, we have this thing where we say composed by Vidya Makan in collaboration with Sonya Suares, which is kind of a new thing that we came up with in that I am the songwriter, but the songs don't exist without Sonya's brain.
Yeah,
Sonya's
for
input.
sure.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So it's just like constantly just developing, I guess, both in a collaboration, but also the space of how to make a creative work as well.
Yeah. It was really cool, like refinding that and creating our own way of this very different show as well. People keep asking me, so is it a musical comedy? Is it a song cycle? I'm like, yes and yes and yes.
Yeah,
So
you have to come and see.
yeah. We said like it's a concept musical, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a slight narrative through it that kind of disappears and comes back.
Right.
But the main narrative of it is nationhood.
Yeah.
Is the concept of nationhood.
And I saw the cast list drop today.
Yes.
So you're in it.
Yes.
And Milo Hartill
Yep.
is in it as well.
Oh my
so
God.
I mean already like tick.
Our cast is like
Yeah.
when we saw the self-tapes, I just lost my mind. We have
wow.
some incredible artists who I just cannot wait for Australia to fall in love with them.
Oh,
a lot of
cool.
them haven't really worked. Crystal West is playing Mother Alternate. She's making her musical theatre debut.
Love
we
that.
have Mindy Quanton, who's a phenomenal performer who's playing Mother. Yeah. Incredible cast. I'm obsessed with them.
That's so cool. How are you going to work within the space with the cast, but also, I guess, as the composer and lyricist, how do I want to word this? How are you going to work both as actor, but then still have a hold on the show, I guess?
For sure. Part of the process, we've actually had 3 workshops coming into this. So all of the writing has been workshopped, and we're kind of at a place now where we feel pretty confident about it, and I've been able to kind of just let that go a bit.
Okay.
But I'm also sharing the role of woman too. We're woman too.
Yeah.
So, with Ava Madden. So what's that allowing us is the opportunity for often her to step in, and then I'll be able to step out, be able to have a look. Oh, okay. Make whatever changes that need to happen, which will always happen in a new musical.
Of course, yeah.
But then also get to step in myself, because it's been my dream to write and perform in one of my own shows for God, like since I was this big.
Oh, so cute.
So yeah.
That's so great. That's so wholesome.
Yeah.
Well, there was one thing I wanted to ask you before I ask you our theatre thoughts question was, how do you stay inspired and how do you stay motivated within the changing landscape of theatre?
You know what? I think about theatre all the time. I get up in the morning and I'm like, this would be a cool idea for a show. And then all throughout the day, like I'll hear people talk and I'm like, lyrics. Oh, that. And I'll go to bed thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it's something that is always on my mind. I'm obsessed with it. I feel like I get inspired by a thirst for wanting to continually create something new in a way that is me as well.
Yeah.
There's probably a bit of narcissism in there too, and that like I just want to get my voice out there too. But I really feel like I've got something to say, and I know I'm good at saying it.
Yeah. Well,
So
all the great artists have, like, when you spoke, then I was just watching in my mind Tick, Tick, Boom, the film with Jonathan Larson.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, and you're like, a little bit of narcissism is not a bad thing, because
Totally.
like,
Well, it's just confidence.
yeah,
right?
it's the confidence in you, and you come across as so confident because you know exactly there's a sense of
Well,
passion.
I
in
know
you.
what I'm good at. I also know what I'm really bad at, and I could name a huge list of those things for you. Have you seen my feet? Because they don't arch well.
But I think what I was trying to say with that was the sense to build something new and find your voice and then put it on the stage. You know, so many people have done it. There's that gem that just changes the landscape.
And it's not about necessarily having to be something ridiculously important. I think it's just being part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at Lin-Manuel Miranda and Lucy Moss and Toby Marlowe and Stephen Sondheim, they're all geniuses, but I look at their work and I'm like, yeah, I'm like part of you guys, you know, and that's exciting. It makes me feel like I'm meant to be here.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait for audiences to come and love or hate or whatever in between,
Yeah.
but to react to the show and for it to stretch them and maybe push them or hold them. Depending on who you are, I think the show will speak to you in many different ways. As long as it speaks to you, come see it. I'm really
Get
excited.
it up there.
Yeah.
I'm very excited
Yeah.
to see it. As soon as I heard you were doing it, and then I like kept researching and listening to you and saw the poster, I was like, no, yep,
How
I'm
amazing
definitely.
is our poster?
I love it.
Monica Higgins. Insane.
Yeah, it's
I'm
just
obsessed with it.
very eye catching. I go,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna see that one. Did you want to do our 1 minute theatre thoughts?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Okay, because I don't think we did this last time.
I don't think we did either.
It was a relatively new thing, I thought. Ready? Okay, here we go.
I mean, I don't think so, but let's just go
Who's
for it.
ever ready? What's been your favourite production you've seen recently?
Recently, Sex Magic at Griffin Theatre. Nicholas Brown is a genius.
Okay. What's your go-to karaoke song?
I don't really do karaoke, but I'm notorious
Shocking.
for making up songs all the time, everywhere, and they're ridiculous, and I belt them out, and that's a thing.
Are they catchy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, they're catchy.
What role haven't you played yet that you'd still want to?
One that I am yet to write.
Yeah?
I think. That's where my heart is at right now.
That's a great answer. Who inspired you as a young performer?
Beyonce and Nina Simone.
Who inspires you now?
Ooh, my mother and my sister.
Oh, sweet.
And my dad.
Yeah. Which production would you most want to see come to Australia?
Another one of mine. Or
Best answer.
Hadestown.
Ah, excellent. That is the one that's on like the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more I get it on the podcast, it's like hopefully someone will
Yeah.
go, oh, maybe we should bring it.
Please.
And the last question was, what's your ideal lineup for an Australian music festival?
Okay. Electric Fields, Hiatus Coyote, like let's get the young divas back together. Baker Boy, Kylie Minogue, John Farnham. And Heidi, our musical director, has a band in Tassie called L'Aphrodisiac, who just released their debut single. They are amazing, so they will also be headlining.
Cool. That sounds great. And when do tickets go on sale for that?
For that, when someone wants to give us the money.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Vidya, for coming
Thank you
in
for having me.
and talking about that. Was so wholesome and so passionate as well. I love when I have people on here and they talk so passionately about what they're doing.
Thank you so much.
So I think that'll come through.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the show.
Yeah. A massive thank you to Vidya Makan for joining us as our guest on this episode. All the links for the Hayes Theatre's production of The Lucky Country can be found in this episode's description or by heading to the musical's Instagram account at Lucky Country Musical right now. This episode was produced by Echidna Audio. Follow them on Instagram at Echidna Audio for all their audio services. Once again, if you enjoyed our podcast, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts and head to the link in this episode's description for our Instagram account, TikTok, YouTube, and Patreon. My name's Justin Clarke, and I'll see you next time here on the Theatre Thoughts Podcast.